Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. That's right, so Skills and Abilities is back, baby. I know we had a small hiatus because of Diablo 4 and some other interesting things that's been happening, but we also had Ladder Season 3 and some other stuff, but I'm hoping to hop back on the train here. Now, if you haven't caught my newest solo self-found run, I am currently running a Druid. I have GGM_Kubus here. I'm currently level 62. Now, the cool thing about Druid is that Druid does have some alternate forms, and I figure why not start our Druid skills and abilities on just the lowliest of lowly, Lycanthropy. So Lycanthropy isn't really like the most amazing ability in the world, and it's not something that you generally have to sink a million points into, but it is, however, honestly kind of necessary if you want to maintain either the bear or the werewolf forms. Lycanthropy does some pretty cool stuff. Not only does it increase the duration of course, werebear and werewolf forms, but it also increases your maximum life up to a pretty crazy amount. In fact, let's go on to another character so I can mess around with the skills. I'm sure I've got several characters around here that I could play with. Now, this particular character has level 40 Lycanthropy, which is currently 820 seconds and a maximum life of 215%. As you can see right now, I only have 1,934 life, and when I transform into a werewolf or a werebear, in this particular case, the werewolf, I now have 4,859 life. Now, some of the more interesting things that occur with the Lycanthropy and the Shapeshifting abilities is that, number one, your life is always filled to the exact amount plus the percentage. So if I go out here and I get damaged, I don't even know if I can get damaged down here, but let's get wailed on a little bit. Alright, so as you can see, now I have 1,520. When I shapeshift to my various forms, the amount of life will be equivalent to the amount of life in my shapeshifted form. So that bonus maximum life applies to your actual amount of HP that you currently have. It does give you the maximum, of course. As you can see, I still have the 4,859 maximum, but my health has been retroactively adjusted, essentially, to be the equivalent of the bonus life plus how much I have missing. Which is, interesting. Now, why in particular would you want to increase Lycanthropy over, say, the werewolf or the werebear form? Well, the duration of your werebear form is pretty important, and the easiest way to demonstrate this is just to put maybe like 1 point in there, and you'll notice that it's only about 180 seconds, which 180 seconds is what, about 2-3 minutes? 60 is 120, and then 60 to 120 is 80. So yeah, about 3 minutes. And what happens is if you're in your werewolf form and you're in combat, you're using your abilities, you're doing what you need to do, like maybe you have feral rage running or whatever, and you're attacking the target. Well, the problem is that a lot of these abilities can only be used in werewolf form. And on top of that, your bonuses and your character may be set up specifically for werewolf form. So if you're in the middle of fighting a whole bunch of monsters and your werewolf form deactivates, this can be extremely detrimental to your character overall, because you're going to then be trying to use something like Fury. Your werewolf form is going to deactivate. I'm going to simulate this, of course. So you're attacking, and then all of a sudden your werewolf form deactivates, and then you've got to reactivate your werewolf form to go back in and actually fight again. And having your werewolf form deactivate is absolutely dangerous. Something you may have also noticed just there is that when you reach 1 life, you automatically deactivate the form. So you actually don't die in the werewolf form or the werebear form. You actually cannot actually die in the werewolf or werewolf form. What happens is when you hit 1 life, you immediately will de-transform back into your human form, at which point the next following hit will kill you. But you can't actually die in this form, which is rather interesting. So when you detransform, it's not always going to be because your lycanthropy isn't high enough. You know, you could have, for instance, level 27 lycanthropy with a 560 second duration, and if you hit 1 life, it's still going to detransform you into your base form, which is, of course, not going to be helpful. Now, lycanthropy itself is interesting because it affects both the werebear and the werewolf form. So if you were interested in doing something like some sort of cross build utilizing the new Metamorphosis helmet, which allows you to transform back and forth between the werewolf and the werebear form, gaining bonuses for being in both forms, lycanthropy would be a better way to increase the health and the life, or the timer, on both skills. Whereas werebear has some pretty nice damage and defense when you bring it up, and werewolf has some pretty nice attack rating and attack speed when you bring that up. Honestly, if you're trying to use both forms at the same time, lycanthropy is going to give you the highest duration and the highest max life bonus out of the two, so that every time you transfer back and forth between the two forms, you'll still have that amazing life bonus. Now, unfortunately, you can't seamlessly transform from one form to the other, so you have to down transform, and then up transform, then down transform, and then up transform, which is, of course, not going to be particularly fast in combat. I hope eventually they do apply a patch to make this a little bit better. Overall, lycanthropy is one of those skills that you're just going to have if you're a werewolf or a bear. Are you going to max it out? Maybe, maybe not. One thing I would recommend that you consider is that werewolf really doesn't have a lot of defense, which makes them kind of like raw sponges. So the more HP they have, the more they can potentially, mitigate damage. Because obviously if a hit comes in and they can't block it, they can't, their defense doesn't prevent it from hitting them, and they have no, avoidances, it has to actually be absorbed into their HP pool, at which point HP becomes more important there. It's also important to note that the Druid gets very poor vitality per HP point. You'll notice that I have currently 1,782. Actually, let's go back to our base form. 699 life. And when I put 1 point of vitality in, I go from 699 to 701. So 1 point isn't as much as some other classes. So, like, for instance, if I were to dump all 435 stat points here into my vitality, I would get a pretty decent amount of life. But at the same time, other classes like the Paladin or the Barbarian actually get more HP per vitality than I do. And the reason for this is because I get more HP in other ways, like with my Lycanthropy and also my Oak Sage. And it's also important to note that these two do actually combine. So if you were to use your maxed out Lycanthropy and your maxed out Oak Sage together, you get a pretty decent amount of HP between the two. Now, I do believe the Oak Sage doesn't actually activate until you're outside of town. But as you can see now, I have 6,450 HP, which is a hell of a lot more impressive than 699. I think that's pretty much it for Lycanthropy. You can get Lycanthropy on helmets and things like that, and of course, utilizing items that give you plus shapeshifting skills will definitely have an effect. Whether or not you want to max it out or you just want to leave it at a couple points is up to you. I would recommend getting it to a decent duration, though, just simply so that it's not constantly going down in combat. One thing you can do, though, to refresh the duration is every single time you're about to go into combat, before you go into combat, downshift and then upshift to refresh the timer. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when it's just a simple video on Lycanthropy. And as always, keep watching.